Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. This interview is backed by popular demand, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you, when the certain gentleman we're going to talk to today first came on the show about 3 weeks ago now, I cannot tell you how many emails I had from people saying, you must get him back. I kind of understood it. I found it fascinating. Others said it was so crystal clear. I'm really interested in the affidavit stuff. And so I said to Alex, you've got to come back. Let's go through the affidavit and find out what that's all about, correct the standing and all of that. So ladies and gentlemen, he is back. Alex, welcome back to the show. It's lovely to have you here.
Absolute pleasure to be back. And again, I've got to thank my mum for writing all of those emails.
She's a good sort, isn't she?
It's good support.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been very popular. And I think one of the reasons why is that you took us right back to the beginning, back to the whole business of the placenta and knowing who you are or not who they think you are, the claiming of all of that. And you made it very crystal clear. And I think people were able to follow that. And I'm very thankful for that. And at the end of the interview, we mentioned about the affidavit and the correcting the standing and putting yourself, I suppose, into the private away from the big corporate takeover, which is happening at the moment all over the world. So I'm fascinated to learn more.
Yeah. So let's get into that. We know how they created the fraud. And so the next thing is, well, I know what the mess is now, but how do I get out of it?
Yeah.
The first thing is to understand that their whole system is a system of commerce and trade. And so when you had all of the sailing ships going around the world with Cook and in the Dutch East Indies and all of that, it was all about trade. It was all about conquering the trade and all the resources that were around the world. And it's been that way ever since. Suez Canal was built for trade reasons. One of the things I love about the Suez Canal is even in times of war, ships from all countries can travel through there without being upset, which tells you that, hang on a minute, if you've got two battleships that, they're both from the opposite side, they go through the Suez Canal and they don't fight each other. Why not? How does that happen? Because both sides are controlled by the commerce and trade. They don't want their business interrupted.
Right.
So once we understand what we're dealing with, which was a system in commerce and trade, and all of that happens on paper. Their entire world happens on paper. So going to the local council, and I love what I see over there in Europe with the French and the UK, where they'll dump a whole lot of horse shit on the council property and do all of that, and they complain, which is beautiful. I love it. But it doesn't mean anything because they don't recognize the living man. The only thing they recognize is your fiction name, which is your surname. So how do you deal with that? Well, the strongest, most powerful document in their system, in the system of commerce of trade, is the unchallenged affidavit. Because the unchallenged affidavit becomes the contract between the parties. It actually becomes the law. So the advantage of putting an affidavit into their system is you can define the difference between the living man or woman and the fiction account that's been created. So once you have done this affidavit and you've put it into their system, now you have standing in their system. And then it gives us that power base. On top of that, and we'll talk about this in the second half, is that because you were made the beneficiary of these trust accounts, it gives you the power, because you're the sole beneficiary, to establish the office of the executor. But I'll get to that in the second half. Let's talk about the affidavit first.
Right.
Now, there are people who will go into a court and they say, I am the living man, I am that, and they wonder why they don't get anywhere. Well, as I said, the living man is not recognized in their court and can't be heard. So what you have to do when you go into a court is you have to establish your standing as the executor of the capital lettered name. Once you establish that, the judge, the magistrate, whoever, cannot be the executor. So, because that's the position they play, because the office is open, there's no one in it, they step in the office, they do all of these things. But once you create the office, they can't.
Right.
This is where we'll get to this second half of why that's important. The difference is with the affidavit is you have to make sure you write it properly. And there's lots of people who write things in quantum grammar and all of this technical jargon. And people say to me, but shouldn't we write it like with a colon before our name and all of that? And I said, well, when you were born, did your mother go, I'm going to name you colon John?
Exactly,
No.
yes.
She just named you John. So don't get caught up in the quantum grammar, which is an invention of another man. It's not real. It's an invention. It's a creation.
Yes.
And you don't need to do that because you are the king or queen of your kingdom. This is what the affidavit says. You are a sovereign being, not sovereign. People say, well, hang on, what's the difference between sovereign and sovereign? Well, a sovereign is usually the ruler of a whole lot of people. So there's a hierarchy.
Right.
When you are a sovereign, and that's spelled S-U-V apostrophe E-R-A-N, when you are a sovereign being, you are just a ruler in your right. You're not a ruler over anybody else. You are just a ruler of your kingdom. And your kingdom is actually your body because it was created by you. Now, what's really important about this affidavit that we've created, which a lot of other people have not done, they'll create an affidavit from the living man. You think, well, there you go. Well, I've created an affidavit from the living man. Yes, but who owns the living man? You haven't defined who owns the living man.
Yes.
The unum sanctum, which I think we mentioned last time.
We did.
We didn't go lots into detail about it, but enough to know that the unum sanctum was the Vatican claiming every soul on the planet. And unless you rebut that, the Vatican owns your soul. And of course, if they own your soul, they own the living man, the living woman. So you have to do an affidavit from the perspective of the soul, which is only governed by the Creator. Cannot be challenged, cannot be superseded, ignored, whatever. So the affidavit that we've created is an affidavit from your soul. Now, your soul has no name, it's just a vibration, but you can give it a name. You can give it an appellation, whatever you like to. And we had one lady who named her soul Butterfly Pumpkin.
Nice.
Because that's just what she wanted to call it, and you can do that. And then it's operating, it's the affidavit of the soul through the living form. And the living form is given names by the mother. I'm talking a general case here. So it might call it John Robert. It is given an appellation, not a name. I think we talked about this last time in terms of when you name something, you claim dominion over it.
Yes.
And then, of course, the placenta gets abandoned, taken up by the government, and they give it a surname. Sur, of course, a French prefix which means on. It's a name that's been put on, so they're putting a name onto it to claim dominion. That's how the trust accounts come about. So once you've done this affidavit, you then serve it. And it's quite a lengthy affidavit. It doesn't really have to be, but we want to make sure that we cover every possible nick and cranny and do all of that. So do you want to just bring up the one that I've got there, just so people can get an idea of what we're talking about here?
Sure.
That's
half of it. Hang on. Let's get the whole thing.
So obviously that's mine because it's got my ugly puss on the front of it. But the interesting thing is what's in the top left-hand corner as we look at it. Well, it's got a flag. That's actually my flag. Everyone is entitled and should create their own flag. Okay, so that's my flag. Why do I have a flag? Well, when they come onto a new land, what do? they stick a flag up to
Yeah.
claim it. The reason why it's in the top left-hand corner is because we, in English-speaking countries, we read from left to right and top to bottom, which means if I put my flag there, everything that follows under this document comes under my jurisdiction and my dominion. If you look at an
Right.
invoice from like the police or the courts or something, they always stick their logo in the top left-hand corner
Yeah.
because they're claiming everything that follows after that. So I've
Oh, that-
created my own flag. That's simply the Eureka flag from when the miners here in Australia in Ballarat stood up to the government. And they created the Eureka flag. It's got my lineage coat of arms stuck in the middle of it. And then across the top of it, I've put the words Fiat Justiae Ruit Caelum, which is translated as justice is in heaven. And that's my way of doing that to the government.
Very
So
good.
everybody should create their own flag, and you should put it in the top left-hand corner of all of your documents, because it says, I'm a kingdom. I have to be treated like any other country in the world. Because
Right.
they work on flags. Okay, so if you don't have a flag, you can't commit with the nations of the world. So then we've got that. Of course, I've got my image on the front there, which is also part of an annexure that is in the affidavit. And it says here, statement and declaration. This is an old one. It should be now statement and proclamation, which is even stronger.
Right.
Or asseveration. You can put an asseveration, Asservation, which is a statement made on oath to God, which is even higher than a proclamation of truth. And then the word affidavit is put in double quotes, because that's a word that they use. Whenever you use something that you don't agree with or do whatever, you always put it in double quotes. And this is of Alex, which is my soul name, in and through the living being incarnated into the given appellations by my mother, etc., etc., etc. For, here it says, believed to be and thus acting as the beneficiary and principal. So I'm making it very clear to them who I am and how I can act. For the deceased state at law, which is the capital lettered entity. Now, this is an example of capitis diminutio maxima. That's when you capitalize everything. That removes all of the rights. That's a slave. Capitis diminutio maxa. There's a capitis diminutia media, where the first two names would be in lowercase, but the surname is in capital letters, all caps. And then there is capitis diminutia minimus, which is all of it in lowercase. Now, some people think that if all of your words in lowercase, then that takes you out of their system. It doesn't. If the surname is there, you are a chattel.
Right.
You are a slave. So then we go through, and there's a whole lot of different paragraphs here. If you just go down a little bit, I'll tell you a little funny story about this one. Just there, where it says purpose, in brackets, occupation. Because if they'll often ask you, what's your occupation? If you answer that, you have just consented to being under their system.
Right.
I do not have an occupation. I have a purpose. And we have more fun with them by saying, I'm a galactic emissary, which means as a galactic emissary, I have diplomatic immunity. It's very important, diplomatic immunity. Now, the next one's got current place address, and you'll see there it says planet known as Earth. In one of my many sojourns in front of the judiciary, I got accused by the police of not providing my address. Now, I had handed the police officer my affidavit as evidence. I said, everything that you need is on there. Now, he didn't keep it. He just put it on the windscreen because I got pulled over on the road. So when we got to court, I challenged him. I said, where's the evidence? He said, oh, I didn't take any notice of that. So I said to the judge, I said, well, Your Honour, he needs a warning because he's been tampering with evidence. and he was told this was evidence. So he was on the back foot straight away. He didn't have it, but I kept it. So I said to the judge, I said, well, I have that here. And so I was able to put it into evidence in my case. So having been accused of not providing my address, I said, Your Honour, I did. I handed him the document. The document has my address on it. And he looked down and he turned to the prosecutor and he said, well, Mr. Prosecutor, it says here on the first page, address, planet known as Earth. Now, Mr. Prosecutor, you may not be happy with that, but he complied and he did give you his address. So the matter was struck out.
Wow.
So we can have, once we know how to do this, we can have a lot of fun with them.
Yes.
So also here you'll notice that I have the town in double brackets, double quote marks.
Right.
Because no one can prove to me that the name of a town is real. It's just a town known as.
Yes.
Because if a total stranger walked into the middle of the city and you said, what town are you in? They go, I don't know, because it can't be proven. The other thing there is you'll see the square brackets around Victoria and around the postcode as we have it there. They also can't be proven. So when we put them in a square bracket, the square bracket comes under something called the four corners rule. The four corners rule means that anything that is in a box or surrounded by four corners is actually not part of the document.
Right.
Now, if most of you look at your court documents or infringement notices or charges from the police, they're all in boxes. Everything's in boxes, which means it's not part of the document. And this is where they put all their fraudulent information. Everything that is fraudulent information, they put into a box, because then they can't be accused of fraud, because under the four corners rule, it's not part of the document. Pretty clever, aren't they?
They're very clever.
But we ignore the boxes.
Right.
So that's how we set the whole thing up. Of course, notice to principal is notice to agent, means that you could walk into the company or the court or whatever it is, you could hand it to the cleaner. And that means it's been served on everyone in the company up to the CEO.
Right.
And we've got an interesting case here at the moment where we've served it on all of these top people, because this is what you do with your affidavit. You serve it on the CEO, chief commissioner, head judge, serve it on all of them, who then proceed to ignore it. And then you get up against a minor magistrate or someone who has no idea what's going on, and you can have a field day with them. Because the thing about the affidavit is you give them 28 days to challenge it. And you tell them the only way they can challenge it is through a point-by-point affidavit signed at the risk of perjury. Now, we've served over 4,000 people. Over 4,000 people here have done these affidavits and served them. And you're serving them to about 10 to 15 people. So there's probably 80,000 affidavits have been served here. Not one single one of them has been challenged.
Good heavens.
Because it's written in a way it can't be challenged.
Right.
So what that means is after 28 days, this becomes the contract. This becomes the law between you and those parties. Now, in this affidavit, we rebut the authority of all the courts, all the police, unless they have a written contract. So if they take you then to court and they haven't got your consent, they have breached your contract. So I don't know if we want to wade through the contents of the affidavit, because if people are interested enough, they can get a copy of this off the website, off the People's Court of Terra Australis website. Anyone in the UK, obviously, you're going to have to adjust some of the places and the names, etc. But the principle is pretty simple.
Yeah.
And you can see there how we've set it up there. to go through. It quotes maxims of law, which that means then that they have to abide by these maxims of law. They don't have any choice. And what we're showing them is, you want to play fire? We've got bigger fire sticks than you have, because we know where all your weaknesses are. So it uses their system against them. And I say this all the time. Do not try to fight their system. You'll lose. But if you use their system against them, that means you're turning their weapons on them. And remember, this is a paper war. You're not going to win by going in the street and causing problems, because that makes you a belligerent. Because all of these companies, people have to realize, you're under a form of martial law. We in Australia are totally under martial law. But the illusion of martial law is that the courts and the Constitution and all of these things can keep going. Now, the reality is, you go back to the time of the Magna Carta when the people were in the fields, they didn't know they were slaves. They were just trying to survive. But as they started to realize that, that's when people started waking up. So for you, the first step for you guys to be free is to have an affidavit filled out and served. Now, that it takes about 35 to 40 minutes to go through to do it. So it's not a hell of a lot of time, but it is like giving yourself a safety net before you start walking across a tightrope. If you don't have it, you don't exist in their system. You've got nothing to refer back to, because once this affidavit is validated by them not replying, every single document that you serve on the police, on the courts, on the banks, anyone, you can refer back to the affidavit, paragraph 27, paragraph 26. You haven't rebutted it. It is the law between us. It's the contract. So if you want to bring up next, David, the bill of sale document, because a lot of people are under the illusion that they own their house and that they own their car. Anything that is in the name of the surname is owned by the state. You know, when they were jokingly saying, you will own nothing and be happy?
Yeah.
They were thumbing their nose at you, because what they were saying is, you don't own anything anyway. Everything in the name of the fiction is owned by the state through the trust account. But there's a way around that, because they do acknowledge bills of sale, invoices, because it's trade and commerce.
Right.
So what you do, you are the beneficiary of the trust account, which means that you can act as the executor. So as the executor, you can sell the property, and property is a variety of things. So if we're talking about land, land cannot be bought and sold, because land belongs to the creator. There's a maximum law that says whoever creates owns. So land belongs to the creator. So how do they get around that? Well, what they do is they create a piece of paper called a title.
Right.
Ian Botham, good old Ian Botham?
Yeah.
He's Sir Ian Botham now, isn't he?
He is.
Right? He became a Sir because he agreed to submit to the Crown. Okay, so you've got Ian Botham here, and the title, which is separate, given to him. It's the same with land. Land is separate, but they create a title, which is a piece of paper.
Yes.
So you get a land title. And if you have a look at your land title, it will start to talk about property, because the property is not the land. Usually on your land title, it'll have description of land. It's like if I write down, wait a minute, a description of land, that would be like, 12 acres of gently undulating pastures with some trees over here. That's a description of land. But their description of land, and you probably see it on yours, says Folio 302, Volume 26. That's a description of paperwork.
Right. Yes.
So the property that they're selling you is the paperwork, not the land. And I know that's going to be like people going to be jaws dropping, going, well, what? You don't own your house. You don't own the land. It's the same with your car.
Yes.
So what we do, yep. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that. Hang on, let me go back to where we are. I was just going to say, because that will frighten people when they think they've spent, 100, 200, 500, whatever thousand it is on a property over 25, 30 years, and think, what do you mean I don't own it? I've been paying this at a huge premium throughout my life.
It's a brilliant scam. Absolutely brilliant scam. Whoever thought it up was a bloody genius. And they have convinced people for, thousands of years that that's the way it is.
Mm.
But it's not.
No.
So here's the thing. Once you uncover this fraud, you can go back and you can charge the bank and say, I want to get paid all of that money back. Thank you very much, with interest, at 4 times the rate that I paid it to you, because the whole contract was fraudulent from the beginning. And they know that.
Mm.
So that's a whole another thing we can talk about. So the bill of sale,
yes.
You as the beneficiary, and we've talked about how you become the beneficiary of this trust account from the time that you're born. And because you're the only beneficiary, you're the sole beneficiary, and they play on words, SOUL and SOLE. You are the sole beneficiary. Because of that, you can act as the executor.
Yes.
So you can make a decision to say, I'm going to sell, in this case, it's my car, which they call a vehicle, but I'm going to sell the vehicle out of the public into the private, to the living man. So people said to me, but what? So you're selling it to yourself? I said, no. Mm. The beneficiary is selling an asset of the trust to a living man, which it's entitled to do. And in that moment, it ceases to be a vehicle. Now, this was sold for $1 silver, because I get to determine the price on things.
Right.
It's sold for $1 silver, and the title is transferred. So this actually is given to the title's office to tell them, not to ask them, but to tell them. And that's my ID plate. I don't have a registration plate anymore. I have an ID plate. And that ID plate happens to be M31, which is the Andromeda Galaxy. And then it's got a cartouche of the Pharaoh Akhenaten. Right. So that's my ID plate. So it's not registered, it's recorded with the People's Court. It's a court of record. And the other thing too is we've got 2 courts on this document. You see the bottom there, it's got the People's Court. But there's another court at the top of the document, which is the Moot Court of Terra Australis. And people say, well, what's that? I said, well, that's my court. Because all courts are businesses. Yes. So you can set up your own court, your own business, and you have the same rights as any other court.
And if I remember rightly, moot is an old Saxon word, or at least it was. We have moot mounds in which people used to gather, the Saxons would gather to make decisions and effectively act as a court.
Yes, yeah. One of the few people who has picked up on that, that I chose the word very carefully. People say, but doesn't that mean being silent? I said, no. No, it's alternative. A moot court is an alternative court.
Right.
But if you wanted to set your own court, you can set up your own court and just make it a court of record. And what's really interesting is your court gets to make decisions. And those decisions can be challenged, but the decisions have to be upheld, especially in their courts. where they say in writing that they must uphold the rulings of all other courts, especially superior courts. And the court of the living man is superior to their courts of fiction. So you can go into a courtroom, and I've done this one, it's great fun. Said, "Oh, Your Honour, the matter's already been determined." And they say, "What?" I said, "Yes, it's been dismissed." They go, "What?" They're blindfolded. I said, "No, it's been dismissed by a higher court." And then I hand over the document, which is the ruling, and they say, and they look at it, "What's this?" And they say, "What's this moot court of terra australis?" I said, it's a court of the people. It has higher jurisdiction." And then the judge makes the stupid thing and says, "Well, I don't recognise that court." At which point I say, "Well, under the laws of equity, I don't have to recognise your court. Thank you very much. Good afternoon." It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You can see I have a lot of fun when I'm doing this. And I literally was doing some documents today for a guy I'm helping out who's been, convicted of some stuff. It's only minor stuff, but he has to go to the corrections unit and everything. And I sent a little notice to them, which was a power of attorney document saying that he'll be attending the meeting, but you're not to talk to him. You're supposed to, you can only talk to me and through me. And it was a Zoom call, and then she blocked me. She wouldn't let me go on. And he was instructed to say to her that if she does that, just to say, "I'm not saying anything without my power of attorney here," which he's entitled to do. What she didn't realise, that the document that we sent her had a tacit agreement with it, was that if she spoke to him, she agreed to pay $50,000 remedy per incident. So in the space of 49 seconds, she spoke to him 3 times because we recorded it.
Yeah.
So an hour later, she got sent an invoice for $150,000, which she will not be able to get out of because she's contractually obliged to it by the documents that we sent her. So you have a lot of fun once you realise you are far more powerful than these fictional entities.
Yes.
So we've got the bill of sale. You can do it for your house, and we've got people who have transferred the title, the property, for $1 silver, and it must be silver or gold. Because if you go into your legislation, it's probably the same in the UK as it is here. It says that currency is silver or gold coins. That's what currency is. So all of your paper money, it's monopoly money.
Yes.
But it doesn't define whether the silver and gold is the colour or the content. So you can sell things for $1 silver or gold coin, and it is legitimate sale that they cannot refute. So you sell your house from the fiction, from the trust account, which owns it at the moment. You as the executor sell your house to your living man or your living woman for $1. That's legitimate. Then you stick it in a private trust to protect it. Do not put anything in a trust set up by a lawyer or government. And don't put a house into a trust before you have transferred it to the living man. Because if you think you've protected it and it's still in the name, the surname, that's like putting a wolf in the sheep sheds.
In the sheep pen. And the silver, can I just ask about the silver? Do you send that to the state to say, "There's the money I've paid"?
No. What's it got to do with the state?
Well, as the beneficiary, you're selling the property.
Here we go.
To
That's actually a silver dollar, an Australian silver dollar.
Yeah.
Which is worth, in silver, it's worth about $42 or something like that. Here's what I do. I'll try and do this the right way.
Hang on.
Here is the beneficiary.
Yep.
Who's acting as the executor.
Yep.
And he says to the living man over here, said, "Well, I'm going to sell it to you, but it's going to cost $1 silver." And the living man says, "No problems at all. Here's your silver dollar." Exchange has happened, and it goes from one pocket to the other.
Right. Okay. It's that. So yes.
It's that simple.
Right. I was just thinking that it had to actually go into the trust fund, as if to say, I've bought it now. It comes out of the trust fund or,
No,
whatever. But no, that's grand. Well, that
no,
makes it very easy for people.
very easy to do. So you can do it with your car. You can do it with your properties. You've got boats. You've got whatever assets you've got. If they're in the name of the surname, you need to transfer them into the private as soon as possible.
Presumably,
so how do we really,
sorry,
go on.
presumably everything we've purchased, from small things like cameras to computers to jewellery, etc., has probably been bought using fiat currency or on credit cards in the name of the legal fiction.
If there are documents to prove that, yes.
Right.
But if you go into the local shop and you buy, a container of milk, and you hand over a coin for that, then that's the living man and substance. So it's really only anything that perhaps
there's a title document for.
Yeah, that is recorded on your credit card or the trust account's credit card, as it really is. Anything that potentially could be recorded.
So things like animals, people are being told to register their sheep, for example, or their cats and dogs, or their birds, and farmers and things like that. So just to clarify, anything that you've had to register as you've purchased it.
Well, don't register is the key to that, because if you're registering something is give away ownership. What we do here, we had a great one where the council was chasing up a guy who had a horse on his property. He said, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, tell them that it's a sentient being. It's got its own thoughts. It wandered onto the property and it's happy to stay there. And so unless they can prove ownership."
Yeah. I mean, you can always ask the animal, I suppose. Would you like to be registered? Would you? Hello, Mr. Horse. Would you?
Well, we had a discussion about that. And so we said, "What?" Say, "Well, I actually can talk to my cat. My cat has been nominated as the trustee of my trust account." Okay, so I talk to the cat and I say to the cat, I said, "Oh, do you agree with that? If you agree with that, can you just put your paw print on this piece of paper?" And I put some ink on the cat's paw print, and the cat walks on the paper, and I go, "Well, thank you very much."
There we go. There's your agreement.
Because think about it. People can leave their total estate to a cat.
Yes.
So if a total estate can be left to a cat, then a cat can be a trustee.
Yeah. There you go. I hadn't thought of that.
So yeah, we do a lot of thinking outside the box here, and we have a lot of fun with implementing things that absolutely screw up this corporate stuff, because this corporate stuff is rigid. They have to follow it. We don't. So I think that gives sort of an overview of what the potential of doing this affidavit is. With the bills of sale, is you can transfer everything. The real clincher, Richard, is when the trust accounts are created and they make you the beneficiary, they don't appoint anyone as the office of the trustee, or the office of the executor, my apologies, because they don't have the authority to do that. Only the beneficiary can. So what you've got is you've got these trust accounts operating with sort of an open shop. There's an office, but there's no one running it. So they keep jumping in when they're in court and when they're everywhere else and acting as the executor. And this is where the tort comes in, the executor de son tort. So how do we stop them from stepping into the office? We establish the office of the executor, which you've got the document there. So if you want to flash that up, and I'll talk to that office of the executor document. It's number one. It's really simple. It's a one-page document.
Is it that? Let's have a look. Is that the one? I think that's your affidavit.
That's part of the affidavit.
Yeah. Bear with me. It must be that one.
No, that's a good one. That's the schedule of fees. That is an annexure to your affidavit. So you can actually put down here, if you just scroll down a little bit, it's got item 1, item 2, item 3. You list all of the offences: unlawful breach of copyright, the unauthorized use or publishing of the capital lettered name, which I've claimed ownership of. That's going to cost you $50,000 every time you do it. Non-consensual interactions determined at the discretion of the living man. In other words, if the cops pull you over and you haven't consented to it, that is $50,000. Some of these are $100,000, $1 million. That's your schedule of fees. And because they haven't rebutted your affidavit, they have agreed that this is the remedy. There's no discussion.
Yes. Okay.
So the schedule of fees, that comes with the affidavit.
Right. Okay. So there's that. Let me just see if I can find the office of
the executor.
Yeah, I may not have actually downloaded that from the email. So let me just go back to the email briefly.
All of these documents are available on the website. The Office of the Executor, I think it's 5 paragraphs.
Here we go.
There we go. Proclamation of the establishment of the Office of the Executor. So what do? We list, you'll see underneath that, it's got all the variations of the trust accounts. The capitis diminutio minima, capitis diminutio media, and the capitis diminutio maxima. They steal more of your rights with each of these names. The Alexander Trevor John one, the ones back to front, that's a military one. They institute, Mr. Jones, are you Mr. Jones? You're now in military jurisdiction.
Right. And
you have to challenge on that. Say, oh, has Your Honour just shifted the jurisdiction of this matter? Because there's no Mr. Jones on any of the paperwork.
No.
And Mr. is a military term. And I'm not in the military, so what's going on here? So you can screw them up. So we say, pursuant to the unchallenged and unrebutted affidavit, you, as the beneficiary, are now establishing the Office of the Executor. And you see, if you just scroll down, it's only 5 paragraphs.
Wow, there it is.
From the date of this notice, no other person or living man or whatever is entitled or authorised to operate as the executor. Everything must be done through the Office of the Executor. It's beautiful. Brilliant. It's very simple. And that is trust law. People say trust law. There's martial law and there's maritime law, corporate law. They all sit down here. Trust law is the very top of the tree. It's the highest law there is. The highest law there is. And the highest powerful position is the position as the Office of the Executor. The Office of the Executor is not a living man or living woman. Think about the Office of the President of the United States. When rulings are made by the Office of the President of the United States, it's because presidents can change, but the office is the highest office in the land. You just happen to be the only one that can occupy that office.
Yes. That is fascinating.
And then we create the second document, which is the second proclamation document there, which is notice to cease and desist. You then, as the Office of the Executor, instruct all of the courts, all of the police, because they're all corporations.
Is it on this one?
No, it's the next. It's the next one.
Oh, I don't think I've got. I'll have to hang on a second.
See if you've got that. I'll just keep chatting on it.
You keep going.
So this second document, you send a copy of this to the Pope. You send a copy of this to any court, any corporation that has a business trading name, etc. And it tells them, if you act as an executor without the authority of me, it's going to cost you, the individual, £1 million and your corporation £10 million every time you do it. Now, just to give you an example, this one we did earlier with this lady at the court, in 1 minute or 49 seconds, She broke it 3 times. Each of the remedies for that was $50,000. So an hour later, she got an invoice for $150,000. It's the same thing here. Every single breach, they have to pay for it.
Right.
Now, they get given an option that they can challenge the invoice or they can challenge it, but they can't challenge the office because they've had a chance to do it and they passed on it. It's unrebutted.
And I guess the reason they can't, the reason they rebut or it's rebutted or they don't answer it is they can't. They just can't answer the points that you point. So
that's exactly right. So we're not fighting their system. We are using their system against them.
Right.
And they don't know what to do. I mean, in the last week, I've had 3 registrars at the court in tears within 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds. Because I've just said to them, are you a public servant or are you not a public servant? And they carry on. I said, you have an obligation to serve the public. I'm a member of the public. Am I not? Yes. Then you must do what I tell you. Otherwise, you're in malfeasance of public office. And they break down.
Yeah. I suppose they see the trap that they're suddenly in as it's been exposed, because very few people will speak in those terms and remind them who they really are.
Yeah, and you just refer them to the paperwork. You don't have to yell at them. You don't have to abuse them. You just say very firmly, as a matter of fact, I think you'll love this one. The document that I sent to this woman, I sent it to her on Sunday night. So she received it first thing Monday morning. I rang her this morning, which was Tuesday morning, said, did you receive the document? She eventually works out who I am. And she says, well, yes, I did. I said, you've read it? She said, yes. I said, oh, good. And then I started to tell her what her responsibilities were. And she was very aggressive. Don't tell me what to do and do all of that and sort of stuff. And I said, look, this phone call is being recorded, so you want to be very mindful of what you say. She said, well, you had to tell me the phone call was being recorded. I said, no, I didn't. It's on the piece of paper that you said you read. Because right at the end, right at the bottom, in 5 font, was written, calls may be recorded. You can barely see it. But what do they tell you about contracts? Always read
the small print.
Always read the fine print. So you put it in 5 font, can't barely notice it. It's like if you look at a lot of our notes, our so-called currency, there's writing all over them. It's just very, very small. So we have the same options here in what we do. So we have a lot of fun. Anyone can jump on our Zoom calls Thursday night here in Australia or Friday morning in Australia.
So yes,
all of these documents.
So people have been asking me since you came on. I mentioned at the beginning that there's been a huge flurry of interest. They said, where do we go in touch with this Alex? He seems to be so knowledgeable. And I had resisted because I wanted to check with you that the flurry of people could come in. I didn't want to give away your email address because I know how that is when the email box gets filled up. So tell us about the Zoom calls and where they find them, please.
Yeah, it's the People's Court of Terra Australis.org. That's the website. This is a resource. So there are no members. The minute you turn up on a call, you become part of the People's Court community, which means, unlike many of these other groups that have membership, they can be targeted by the government because your name is on a membership.
Right.
There's no membership, so you can't be targeted as a member of anything. All of the documents have no names on them, so there's no construct for them. The people are the power. It doesn't matter if you're in Ireland or Scotland or Africa or wherever. If you're on the call, that's people power. So if people come to us, you can get the links to the Zoom calls on there. They're at 7:30 on a Thursday night in Australia, Eastern Standard Time. And then we have more in-depth calls on a Friday morning at 10:30 where we actually go into cases that are being held and run at the moment. But if somebody comes on, we'll always try to help them out. I tend to not have the time to take on very many cases. I'm there on a Thursday night to throw my 2 cents, but there's at least 10 other people who know a lot of the stuff that I know. No, they're bloody great bunch of people. And if they don't know something, they'll usually just defer it back to me. If it's something that's totally new that, I haven't gone before, I have to go through and work out, how do we do that? What's the best paperwork to deal with that? So it doesn't cost anyone anything. No membership, no fees. We don't charge for documents. None of that.
That's very honourable, and it's helping people to create a better world.
It's doing more than that, Richard. It's actually giving people their power back.
Yes.
People are becoming empowered for this. You've had the pleasure of meeting, one of the people, Callista, and do with her. Now, Callista, when she first came to the group, was her kids were being harassed. They were threatening to take them off her. She was shell-shocked because she felt so disempowered. Now she's doing amazing stuff because she understands the power of the paperwork and how to put these people back in their place and scare them. And I tell you, if you got an invoice today in the mail for £1 million saying you had 28 days to pay it, and you took it to someone and they said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing." It's not going to go away. It's going to be up here.
Yes.
Because these documents are lawful and they will be upheld. So that empowers people. Don't be scared. Know what your rights are and then stick to them.
Absolutely. Well, again, I can't thank you enough. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest coming along onto the Zooms. And the power of the affidavit, I think you said, once you've written it out, you just serve it to all these different bodies. You're not waiting for a court case or waiting for trouble. You're just saying, hey, I'm just correcting who I am, and now you know. And you've got 28 days to rebut this.
It's great because then if they do try to, serve you an invoice or take you to court, sorry, mate, I've already got a contract with you. Didn't your boss tell you that? Not my problem.
Right.
You might have to pay my $1 million and then you'll have to sue your boss for not telling you.
Yes.
So look, there's lots of other stuff too. We talk about councils and how to deal with councils. And in fact, I did a talk with Callista last week just on councils. So people might want to sort of grab on that and watch it as well. But it applies to everything. And this is a really exciting time to be alive, especially if you're taking your own power back.
Yes, absolutely. So all the information is on your website.
Yep.
Which I'll put a link in, but because of the way YouTube are treating me at the moment, anything that's too long, they shorten. So I'm having to use tiny URLs, which people have to copy and paste. And they keep saying to me, Richard, your URLs are not working. Your links aren't working. No, because they've delinked me. And you have to copy and paste the thing into a browser, which isn't a difficult thing. Some people seem to think it is. I know also that you have, and you alluded to this, I can't remember if it was in this or before we started talking, recording, about Egypt. And it would be great to have you back to talk about what is going on in Egypt, or what has gone on, and what the real truth is. I know you've got I can't remember how many parts it is, a series in which you've made, and I know you want to go and do more.
There's lots of stuff. The reason why Egypt is probably at the core of this is like the true history of the planet is there under the ground, and the powers that be know that, and they're robbing it, They're not telling us what they're finding. We're talking about stargates, spaceships, the true history of pole shifts, you name it. And I'm not a crackpot. I do my research. And right now at the Giza Plateau, underneath the ground there, by the Great Pyramid, there is a whole underground complex that is not being revealed to the people. And some colleagues of mine have just released a video which exposes a lot of that. That's Bill Brown and Trevor Grassi. But if you're interested in ancient Egypt, if you're interested in the true history of the planet, what goes on in other realms and stuff like that, if you're into aliens even, come along and have a chat on a Wednesday night. I haven't got a different link to that, but I'd love to come back and share some of my knowledge just about Egypt.
Yeah, I think that would be fascinating. A lot of people have sort of pointed me in some of these directions, and I've tried to focus on the various points that I do deal with, but it would be fascinating to have that conversation. You put things over so clearly and precisely, and you know you're an entertainer. Says your background, as we spoke before, is in, I think, opera singing and things like that. So putting points over and being eloquent is a skill that is greatly admired and appreciated by those that listen. So it would be fascinating to hear how you tell us a little snippet of what is going on in Egypt. Would be great.
Pretty fascinating. And the reason why it's probably relevant too is all of this control that's happening on the planet is actually traceable back to ancient Egypt, to the Amun priests in the 19th, 18th, 19th dynasties. That's when all of this control really started to manifest. So there is a lineage of this all the way through, and you can trace it through even every president of the United States is blood related on the maternal side back. And I'm aware of that right back to Egypt, how everything is based to the race of beings, the gods who created the human race, which brings in the significance of who Jesus really was, the true story of Moses, what King Arthur is really about, and the Druids, and all this stuff. There's all of these key things in history. And when you know what the real story is, all of those pieces fit together like a finely crafted mosaic.
Wow. Well, it would be lovely. It would be lovely to do that. So we'll arrange another time when you're up for it, and we'll do that. But in the meantime, running out of my hour that I like to allot to these interviews, so that it's a decent chunk for people to view. Thank you again. And I hope that's answered a number of questions. It certainly answered a number for me. And I will be downloading those templates. And the templates are available on the website?
Yep, they are.
Yep.
And
yep.
Not only are the templates available there, but there is a manual which has the recordings of 4 years worth of meetings with people asking questions and answers being given. It is an absolute treasure trove of resources.
Fantastic. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Alex. It's been an absolute joy to have you on there and to clarify a number of things and to take us through those things. It just goes to show we are a lot more powerful than we think, as we all knew we were, but we needed confirmation and an approach, a roadmap.
One thing I'll say, because it was raised after the last conversation, where you said, oh, look, a lot of people said, you've got to get him over to the UK.
Yes.
And do some talks. And I'm more than happy to come over there in November or something like that, if there's enough interest to come over and do a series of talks around the country to really get this down to people. Because somebody here might say, oh, I wish all my friends had been on that call, or
yes.
I can get to watch it. But I've got 100 more questions that I want to ask him. If I get over there, I'm happy to commit myself to going around and to share as much as I can.
Well, that's much appreciated. And I know a couple of people have come forward and they said they would be interested in helping to arrange that. I'm rubbish at that sort of thing, but I know that there are people who specialise in those sort of things, and they may be watching and they may come forward and say, "Okay, yeah, I can book the venues and do all the stuff. And what do we need?" So I can put you and them together and come along and support and do all the rest of it, which would be fantastic.
To do it. I've got to go to Egypt in mid-December, so I'm in that neck of the woods compared to Australia. So
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Hey, November would be perfect. I'll come over there and do some chats, and I can do 2 chats. I can talk about the law stuff, but I can also talk about all of the Egypt and all the other stuff as well for people who were into the different star races that are involved, because they are here. And we're going to find out more and more about them very soon, but about the true histories of Egypt and things like that. So there's a sort of 2 aspects. So you get 2 for 1.
Brilliant stuff. That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. Unfortunately, we have to go, but there you are, ladies and gentlemen. Get your affidavit sorted out. Become the office of the executor as the sole beneficiary of your legal fiction. And things will be rosy. So there we are. Thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to Alex, and we'll be back with more. Until next time, from us both, take care. Bye for now.